Hey everyone, and welcome to today's explainer. We are jumping right into a concept that is absolutely foundational, but honestly, it is so incredibly misunderstood. We're talking about the true nature of behavioral triggers. Whether you're currently grinding away studying for your BCBA exam or you just want to deeply understand the actual mechanics behind human behavior, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to unpack the antecedent today, and we are moving way beyond the basics to completely redefine how you look at the events that shape literally every single action we take. Look, if you've ever taken an intro to psych class or even just cracked open a basic behavior textbook, they probably told you that the antecedent is simply the thing that happens right before behavior. But please let this sink in. This isn't just what happens before. That common definition is a massive oversimplification. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of trap that trips up countless students and practitioners. We really need to dismantle that misconception today. We have got to stop looking at antecedents as just some tick on a chronological clock and start recognizing them for the highly sophisticated historical triggers they actually are.
So let's get into the real master-level definition here. An antecedent is a precise environmental variable that sets the stage for behavior, either evoking it or abating it based on reinforcement history. I want you to notice the emphasis there. It is not just any random event floating around in the environment. It is a very precise variable. And the absolute key here, the actual engine that makes the whole antecedent work, is that history of reinforcement. An antecedent only has power because of what has happened in the past when that specific trigger was present. It sets the stage, basically pulling the strings of behavior by making an action highly likely to happen or highly likely to stop, all rooted in your past experiences. To picture exactly where our antecedent lives in the grand scheme of things, let's look at the ABC sequence, the three-term contingency. This is literally the bedrock of behavior analysis. So we've got point 1, the time before the behavior, which is our antecedent. Point 2, the present moment, is the behavior itself. And point 3, the time after, is the consequence. Now, obviously, the A sits chronologically before the B, but here is the secret. Its true power actually comes from its relationship with the C. It's that consequence, feeding back over time, that takes a simple before event and magically turns it into a powerful, behavior-evoking antecedent. Okay, now we need to totally shift our narrative with this next rule, because it is absolutely crucial. Antecedents do not cause behavior mechanically. They signal whether reinforcement is available right now. You know, when a lot of people think of antecedents, they picture a doctor tapping your knee with a little rubber hammer to make your leg kick. But that's a mechanical cause. That's just a reflex. In operant behavior, which is the stuff we're analyzing here, antecedents are active signals. Think of them like green lights or red lights out in the real world. A green light doesn't physically force your foot to press the gas pedal, right? It just signals to you that if you press the gas pedal right now, you'll successfully get through the intersection. They just signal the availability of a consequence.
What's really interesting is how clearly we can see this signaling effect, what we technically call stimulus control, in action. Let's contrast two super relatable coffee shop scenarios. On one side, we've got a glowing, illuminated open sign and a very, very sleepy client. The outcome? They enter and order coffee. Pretty standard. But on the flip side, we have that exact same sleepy client, but this time, the coffee shop sign says closed. The outcome there? They just walk away. The motivating operation, that deep, intense need for caffeine, is exactly the same in both scenarios. So what actually changed? The antecedent. The open sign signals that reinforcement is available. The closed sign signals that it absolutely is not. It's a completely different behavioral outcome, and it is entirely dictated by the signal. In building on that coffee shop example, those two completely different outcomes perfectly demonstrate something called learned discrimination. That right there is the pure essence of stimulus control. You weren't born knowing what a neon open sign meant. You learned it over time through a history of reinforcement. You learned that walking into a store with an open sign actually gets you what you want, and walking toward a closed sign just gets you a locked door. It's not magic. It's definitely not some invisible force mechanically pushing your legs into the shop. It is a deeply ingrained learned discrimination responding directly to signals in your environment. All right, heads up, because this brings us to a major point of caution. I call this the exam trap, and trust me, it catches so many smart people off guard. When we look at our A, B, and C timeline, we have got to remember that A does not automatically and mechanically cause B. The trap is when we confuse a mere chronological sequence with a true functional relationship. Think about it. Just because a loud truck drives past your window right before you sneeze, that doesn't mean the truck caused the sneeze. You really have to look deeper than just the timeline to prove that an antecedent is actually controlling a behavior. So write this golden rule down.
Temporal precedence does not equal a functional relation. Now, temporal precedence is just a fancy academic way of saying it happened first in time. And yes, for sure, an antecedent absolutely must happen before the behavior. But that sequence alone, it's just not enough. To truly call something an antecedent, you have to prove a functional relation. You have to prove that the behavior is reliably occurring because of that specific signal, driven by a history of consequences. If you don't have that functional relationship, well, you just have two random events happening one after the other.
Let's make this incredibly practical. Here is the mandatory two-step verification checklist that analysts must always use. If you want to prove you have real stimulus control and not just a coincidence, you need both of these. Step 1, temporal precedence. Yes, the environmental trigger definitely has to occur prior to the behavior. Step 2, and honestly the most important one, functional relation. This requires a differential reinforcement history. You literally must be able to demonstrate that the behavior changes based on the presence or absence of that specific trigger because of what has happened in the past. It's a rigorous two-step check and you can never bypass it.
So how do you actually run that practical test in the real world? It's simple. If you suspect an environmental variable is an antecedent, remove it. Just take it away. If you remove that stimulus and the behavior's frequency doesn't change in a predictable way, meaning the behavior just keeps right on happening exactly as it did before, then guess what? That stimulus wasn't controlling anything at all. You don't have stimulus control. You simply have a temporal coincidence. This is the ultimate stress test for any behavioral analysis. You really have to manipulate the environment to uncover the truth. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative final question. In your own observations out in the field, can you truly spot the difference between a verified antecedent and a simple temporal coincidence? Mastering that specific distinction is exactly what separates the novices from the true behavioral experts. If you want to put these highly analytical skills to the test right now, head on over to our secure platform at bxmeducation.com, hit the link and crush today's BxM quiz block to really solidify this knowledge. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.